Welcome, everyone. This is Tech Field Day live at Atmosphere 2016. This is, how many times have we done this, Tom? Quite a few times now. Yeah, it's been fantastic to be able to bring Tech Field Day on the road, open the doors, have a live audience. I'm not sure if you can you switch to the audience camera and show that, in fact, there's nothing up my sleeve. There's nothing surprising. We have a live audience. He's smiling. Hey, Mom. Say hi, Mom. So thank you very much. This has been awesome to be able to bring Tech Field Day on the road and put it in front of people and get live questions and live discussion. Tech Field Day is all about technology. It's all about technologists, and that's why it's a great fit for Atmosphere and the Airheads community and the Airheads like you guys. That's not an insult, by the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about. It's a compliment. It's all about you Airheads, and so it's great to be here. I'm Stephen Foskett. I'm the organizer of Tech Field Day. You can find me online at sfoskett. You can find lots of videos like these at techfieldday.com or at YouTube/TechFieldDay. You'll find our channel there. We actually have over 1,400 videos now posted, and if you like what we're doing, you can subscribe to the YouTube Tech Field Day channel, and you'll just get notified whenever we post these. And I guarantee you will never see slick, boring marketing videos. It's always, well, stuff like this. So without further ado, let's start with our panel of Tech Field Day delegates. We're going to start over here with Ryan. You ready?
Yep. I am Ryan Adzema, at radzema on Twitter. I blog at techevangelist.net. And I'm the co-host of the Whiskey and Wireless show.
You are?
Yeah, I am.
Hey, Eddie.
Hey, my name's Eddie Ferrero. I blog at badfi.com. I'm on the Twitters at Hey Eddie.
Hey, Eddie.
And, hey, that's Blake.
Yeah.
Is that all? That's all you're going to say?
Sure.
All right. So my name is Blake Croney. You can find me at Twitter, at Blake Croney, and I blog, podcast at the No Strings Attached show, which is at NSA show. So yeah, that's me.
I'm George Stefanik. I'm a wireless architect for Houston Methodist Hospital System. Also a consulting partner at FreeSpace Wi-Fi. You can find me on Wireless Guru on Twitter with 3 S's. Also at my8211.com.
It's important to have a lot of S's.
A lot of S's.
And I'm glad you've got 3 of them. All right, I'm going to step over here, and then we can have Sean start.
Sean Neal, I'm on Twitter at SV_Neal and blog.svneal.com.
Hi, I'm Richard McIntosh, 802 Top Hat on the Twitter and 802.wordpress.com on my blog.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Vanage. I'm an architect with Education Networks of America, which is a managed service provider in the States. I blog at revolutionwifi.net, and I am also on the Twitter at revolutionwifi.
Hi, name is Keith Parsons. On Twitter, Keith R. Parsons, and I blog on wirelessdesignprofessionals.com.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So over the years that I've been coming to Airheads and Atmosphere, I've noticed that there's been a shift in what this whole thing is all about. Just by way of background, we did Wireless Field Day 7 times. Now it's Mobility Field Day. Things have changed. This whole network, this whole industry has changed. It seems like it's less about access points now, and frankly, more about clients. And so I want to kick off the discussion with the discussion of clients. And specifically, how are we going to get these clients working well in the frame of modern Wi-Fi? I'm looking at you, Andrew, because you did a fantastic discussion of, well, essentially how Wi-Fi is advertised as sort of speeds and feeds, throughput kind of thing. To me, it seems like that's totally wrong. That's totally the wrong approach, and that's exactly what you said, too. That's why I think it, because you thought it. Stealing other people's ideas is the best idea. So what I'd like to know is how should companies be approaching this? How can we make Wi-Fi more about clients and more about client access and client metrics and client success and less about gigabit throughput. You want to start with maybe the discussion of the throughput versus some other useful metric?
Sure. So I gave a 10 talk earlier, a couple of them on how throughput's a bad metric for Wi-Fi because it's decoupled from your the metrics that matter on a Wi-Fi network, which are really channel utilization and what's idle versus what's busy on your network. And this is a change from switched Ethernet. But getting back to the heart of Stephen's question in this topic was how can we better, be mindful about clients in our network and have a good user experience, I think is what it comes down to. I think there are two aspects to that. First one is being planful in your design as a network admin in deploying your infrastructure to understand the client mix in your environment, and it just can be high level about, general what mix of clients are you seeing, how, are they laptops, tablets, smartphones, what types. Being mindful about if you do control clients, what driver versions they're on, and doing some testing before you roll out something that's especially mission critical. That applies to certain industries, it doesn't apply to others, but if you have that ability, that's great. And I think the other second high level thing you can do from a very useful thing besides design and deployment up front is just on the client side, just make sure that you're keeping in tune with what your clients are expecting. I like to use this term that perception is everything on a wireless network. I can't just sit in a cubicle as a network admin, look at my metrics, look at my controller, look at my APs, and think everything's okay. So I have to get out there, I have to start engaging with the management in my organization, the customers and the clients and the end users in my organization, and actually understanding what their perception is, where they think the network is falling down or where they think it's doing well, and using that feedback day in and day out for the operation of my network and tweaking and tuning. And it's a living, breathing network. It's never just a set it and forget it. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And what are some of the tools and the different ways that we can collect the information? Because that's kind of been the challenge. Is we don't have any way of getting that data off the clients necessarily, unless we have an agent on there that's pulling data, pushing it up. I mean, can you speak to anything about how you can get some of that client information? What are some tricks to do that, to be able to see what's going on?
To a large extent, clients are a black box at this point. I mean, there's some protocol and amendments in the standard that, maybe eventually over time we'll start getting more information out of the clients, like with 802.11v and things like that, with radio management. But it's just not there today. It's not mature yet. And quite frankly, given the price points and the go-to-market strategy of the client manufacturers, that's not a priority for them. They serve the consumer market to much broader and larger profits than they do an enterprise deployment scenario. So I think your best way right now is deploying a network management system like Airwave or something like that, getting the stats you can out of the infrastructure, and doing your due diligence when you are looking at designing your network or troubleshooting a problem of using the actual clients that you are seeing in your network when you go out and you test. When you're looking at surveying and signal strength, take some sample clients around with you and make sure you're baselining what their experience is, not what the experience of is some reference device that's a USB NIC for your survey. And get as close as you can. And then you can watch trends come into your support help desk and you just kind of have to roll with the punches and pick off the highest priority items that are making the biggest impact in your environment, rather than going down the rabbit hole and chasing every little thing. Although we'd love to do that with the CEO or the VP's problem. If they're the only ones having that problem, you probably have bigger fish to fry in your network rather than somebody who can't connect to the file share or something like that because it's an application issue, not a Wi-Fi issue.
And I have to agree with that. So we kicked off an all-wireless office about 2 years ago, and all the points you talk about, baseline, proper design, setting expectations, this is really basic fundamental stuff, right? And you're right about the clients, right? You can't necessarily go down a rabbit hole, but sometimes when you go down that rabbit hole, it's just the tip of the iceberg. And it's that one person complaining. But really, there's other people complaining. They just aren't saying anything, right? Or having the same issue. Definitely concur. In our experience in the all-wireless office, we had to get our arms around the client expectations, meaning the actual Wi-Fi client, and understanding all aspects of it. And it was until we actually got our arms around it and understood some of the issues that we were having. Because until you have an all-wireless office, usually the workflow is that you go to a meeting, you open up your laptop, you do Wi-Fi for an hour. But now when you have an all-wireless office, it's all wireless for 8, 9, 10, 12 hours for some folks. Those issues rise to the top really quick. But everything that you've mentioned, baseline, expectations, proper design.
Well, and I think the other big thing is for certain verticals and industries is mapping your business processes to wireless and understanding where wireless makes the most sense versus where it does not. I think we have a tendency to, overlook as technology evangelists and engineers the business use cases and the business processes that we're enabling. Wi-Fi is really an enabler of new business processes. And we can't just be slamming technology out there because we think it's the best and we think everybody should have it when the users are going to rebel and they don't want it. Or vice versa, they're already using something that you're not providing for. How many times have you been in a large enterprise and end users are going around your formal IT processes and sourcing other solutions because you're not delivering what they want? So I think you have to be really in tune when you're in an enterprise environment about what your business actually needs from you and not just necessarily having a tunnel vision technology view.
So Kirti today demoed Clarity, a way to get some stats where you could flip an access point if it's not serving clients to act as a client and connect up to an access point, and the possibility of using the Aruba sensor as well. Do you see value? I mean, George, would that be something that you would see a value in having a type of device like that in your environment, in those all wireless offices where you could flip a mode and do some tests, run through EAP authentication, see what the millisecond is for the delay of how long it's taken to get on the line? Is that something that provides value to you that your team can utilize, or is that just another dashboard with flashy lights on it?
I think certainly there's value there. I mean, right now what we do is like when somebody says they have a problem, we use the wild OmniPeak appliance behind the scenes for sniffing frames all the time, 24/7. So we use that for replicating issues. I got dropped off the network 2 hours ago. We can go back. We look at the Windows logs, right? So we can see when an association was made and when a disassociation was made. I think adding those tools, a lot of different tools you have to paste together to really build a picture. So now you need to be an expert not necessarily an expert, but you have to know enough to know, how all these individual pieces work. So yeah, if the tool is a dashboard that can generate a lot of information that is real and accurate, yeah, there's definitely value to it.
Well, I'd like to even expand on that more. It's not just that the AP can pretend to be a client. I see a majority, correct me if I'm wrong, of a lot of our wireless problems aren't. And we don't know that because as soon as it becomes a wireless client, all problems are wireless problems. So one of the things that the Clarity can do is allow the AP on its wired side even go and look and say, how's the wired side of the network working? If the DHCP pool is gone and there isn't any left, it's going to manifest itself as a wireless problem. But we should be able to have some tools to help us make a differentiation. Is it in the air or is it on the rest of my network? Because without that, it's a lot slower to troubleshoot a wireless problem to come back to find out I'm on the wrong VLAN.
I think the other thing that I really liked about Clarity was that it was monitoring actual client authentication, association authentication, DHCP, DNS, as it flows through your network. So it's not like a on-demand test, although it can be, but it's actually monitoring what's happening with your real clients and trending that over time. So you have historical visibility into it. And so that makes it easier to troubleshoot because let's face it, how many of you have been getting into Wi-Fi and it takes a while for you to get your legs underneath you to figure out how to quickly and efficiently troubleshoot a wireless problem, to narrow scope, to identify where the issue may lie based on the symptoms you have coming in. Because when you first get into Wi-Fi, the first thing is to just brute force it. Like I'm going to start at layer 1, assume it's an interference issue, and start working up the stack, and that takes forever. If you can narrow scope, and I think that's why I see a lot of value in Clarity, just narrowing that scope very quickly for people who necessarily don't have a great troubleshooting skill set or are still learning, so that they can quickly resolve the issues rather than having to go through some elaborate process.
And it's always easier to find what's not wrong. And if we can take a big chunk of the what's not wrong first, we can get down that troubleshooting a little faster.
Yeah, with Clarity, you can easily define if this is a widespread issue or if it's just that one client and it's all right there in that dashboard.
And from a trending, simple. I mean, I love the trending and the historical piece to say, wait, how come every Tuesday morning something went wrong?
Yeah.
And that won't manifest itself up until someone says, hey, I had a problem on Tuesday. And it won't be until 2 or 3 months later when you go, wait, it's every Tuesday?
I do think the sensor piece is important though, right? So when you look at the solution as a whole, I mean, APs, given where they're located, right, their view is not the same as a client, right? And their radios are not the same as a client. So having a sensor who's, arguably a worse client, down in, at the floor level in places where clients are, I think is pretty valuable to that overall solution.
Wouldn't you rather have, like, how about an agent on the actual client?
That's what I would rather.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That's remotely pingable, that you can actually give it the same schedule to draw that information from, whether the client's a Chromebook or a.
But how relevant would that be in an education kind of vertical, where you don't have any control over a lot of these devices? A lot of places you see that they'll give you, bring your own phone or whatever, we'll still install our app on it, and we'll put all our stuff inside that app, but we don't have any control over the actual device. Is that still, do you think users would be willing to install
I'll take as much data as I can get. If it's 2% of the devices, I'd still rather 2% of the devices feeding me back that client data than none.
Well, and maybe we need to incentivize in BYOD environments users to actually help you out as an admin. Say, let's set up some sort of program. I don't know if it's,
You get
better
pass on the help desk if you have
maybe you get, I don't know how universities set up their networks, but maybe you get a little bit
Here's how we
higher
help you
speeds,
fix
or
it.
maybe you get better Wi-Fi, and it's just, well, if we can say your Wi-Fi is going to be better if you do this,
So
we probably get an uptick.
I literally had this conversation earlier this morning, but if we could see it as more of like an SDK that you can integrate into any other existing app that already has that value, if it's some university app or some healthcare app or whatever, I think that's a better way to get people to actually use it, and rather than a specific app that just does that. Right?
Yeah.
So if someone had the Meridian app and was using it for turn-by-turn in their building already, go ahead and have the tools built in to troubleshoot the Wi-Fi on that device, or submit a ticket or something like that in the app.
Yeah.
Very cool. That's a good
I
idea.
think another benefit, Keith, you said, the issues manifest as a wireless issue as far as the client is concerned. Not every wireless engineer has control over anything on the back end.
Do any?
And being able to, pull up that page and just go, nope, not me. I think for a lot of places invaluable, because I know when I was in higher ed, I would just spin my wheels for hours proving that it wasn't me. I had to prove the opposite. Instead of saying, let me troubleshoot on your system, I had to prove it wasn't mine before they would even open
And
it up.
then on top of that, we're getting, and part of the theme that I've been seeing in the last couple of days is we're adding more and more apps on top of that. That the wireless isn't the end result, it's what rides on top of that. And so we're kind of stuck in the middle when it's the most dangerous and it's dynamic, because data rates change frame by frame, and that there's an app sitting on top. So we have to deal with how the apps are going to deal with it too.
I know from the,
I was just going to ask if anybody in the audience has any questions or comments to make. While you're thinking about that, Tom's got the microphone. Just raise your hand, and we'll let George finish his thought here.
Thanks, Steve. I think from an all wireless perspective, we're at that point now where we're actually looking for an app on the device, right? That we can feed to the cloud. And from the cloud, if a user has an issue, we can then have all those logs that we typically would remote into the box that are in the cloud. My fear is with dashboards is sometimes there's so much information. And while I love a lot of information, the typical admin, it's sometimes too much because they don't know where to go, right? It's trying to find a needle in a haystack. And then sometimes you have to start tuning those measurements. Just talking about contention. Your session talking about, where do apps break for voice at 35% or, et cetera. So it's having that knowledge. But if that knowledge is built into an application to help the admin, the general admin, because, around the table here, we look, that's all we do is Wi-Fi. But there's a lot of folks that just don't do Wi-Fi. They have to do everything else.
Got a question here?
So my comment kind of goes back to a couple different things that you guys were talking about. Number one, if you're spending that much time trying to prove that it's the client issue, why not just reverse that and just fix the client and move on to the next person? I know that's going to be repetition, and that's not always time enough to do that, but I guess in my environment that I work in, I can't tell a client, hey, it's your problem when it comes to the wireless in our environment. I have to say, hey, no problem, let me look at it, and I just dig in until it's resolved.
So what I meant with that was more, what if you're the wireless administrator, but you don't handle the Radius server? That's handled by the server administration team.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Oh,
in that
separation,
case,
yes, I agree there.
I'm not saying, kick the client out. I'm saying, I handle the access to the data center, but once it leaves the controllers, I can't do anything with it, and they come to me and say, prove it's not the network.
Or to answer the reason I kind of chuckled when you brought that up is I would find it, if the client happened to be an Apple iOS device, you're not getting, it's their client issue, but they're not going to change for your network.
They don't have client issues.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I don't expect that. I've ran into a couple of issues, and they've been both Mac and Windows-based, and a lot of these clients are agnostic to what's turned on to their device, and it's a matter of providing them, here's what you might want to turn off to have a better experience, and you let it go at that, and if they say, hey, I did this, and it's still not working, then you get engaged with them because they obviously want to fix the problem, and they're willing to tweak it however's needed to work on your particular network.
Yeah, I think
Sometimes fixing those clients, Georgia had some experience, getting those the actual client drivers to work
Oh,
properly.
I've been down that road, and, you work with the client, and you prove it out, and, as long as the client understands, or you can provide some kind of workaround for them, I think they're good. I think if you're upfront with people, when you're working with them, that's the best policy.
What's really interesting is that, the routing switching guy doesn't have to go talk to Dr. John, right, because of a wrong route. The security guy doesn't have to talk to Nurse Betty because something on security. The wireless guy is always in those trenches. And what I found, especially when it comes to those driver issues, now in my environment, I have some sense of control. I've partnered with facilities and desktop and security to allow us to put in some standards and practices that we're able to test some devices. And we've standardized on NICs, on all corporate devices that we purchase, which happen to be Intel. But I know friends that work in education, they don't have that luxury. Yeah, absolutely. So definitely know your challenge. But in a controlled environment, if you're able to get your arms around the clients, get one driver or one client and then start focusing on drivers, you can at least fix a decent-sized population.
And I did that for a while, and then they went rogue and started buying HP with Brocoms.
Rogue IT is a whole different game, man. But it sounds like you're doing the right thing in handling those client expectations very well. It sounds like you're going above and beyond kind of what you're...
Reel them back in.
Well,
Yeah.
and here's
So
the big
doing
thing
that.
as well. Like I said before, it's perception, right? So even if there are problems, don't be a black hole as an IT support organization or as an IT admin. Give them some communication. Let them know, I'm working on it. This is not going into a black hole and not being addressed. Give them a periodic update. Say, hey, I've done some research, not there yet. Just letting you know, still working on it. Because the lack of communication, how often as a consumer do you go to a company and then try to buy something, or you buy something, you need support, and you call up and it's just a black hole, and then you feel like, well, this is a pile, I'm just going to throw it away rather than have to deal with this frustration. Right. Versus if they just had given you a little bit of communication, like, okay, they're working on it, I can wait, I can be patient.
And this system, Airwave with Clarity, I don't know how many times I've said, I need to look into this. I'm not sure what the problem is. I'll do some research. And they stand there looking at me, expecting it to take a minute. Using Clarity, you can probably show them, okay, it looks like we have an issue here. I'm going to dive into that. And it kind of conveys that you are working on it a little bit better than I'll get back to you.